I done what I do with a lot of things there. I seen the guys jumping up and hitting the bar there. I seen it and thought, I'm not going to try it. I haven't stopped thinking about it for the past 3 minutes. Can I do it? I want to do it in the room of my own. See if it happens, and then it's going to all come back in again. Does that work? Yeah. Last session, guys. This is a strange topic for a bunch of Christians. Is there evidence for God? So it's a strange one to do. I done this in a Queen's campus in Belfast, Queen's University, on the campus, near the campus there. I did this for an invitational service. So skeptics, believers, people who aren't sure, atheists, come along, let's hear evidence for God. So it's a strange one to do for Christians. What I want to do ultimately is show you that there is, you already know that there is. Give us more evidence for God. Give us specific evidences for God. Increase our weaponry, if you like. Alright? So hopefully you get something out of this. Stuff you may have already heard, but I've put it in a very specific way. I've put my evidence for God in a handy acronym that I can remember. Because like I say, I don't like forgetting. The acronym, now I'll tell you the evidences first. Some of you may, again, this is the heavier one of the brain, this one. I'm going to look at the cosmological argument, which is first cause. I'm going to look at the teleological argument, which is also known as the anthropic, some people have had already. Anthropic principle or fine-tuning. I'm going to look at historical argument, history. And I also not going to look at, but I also have in there the moral argument and also testimony. I put them all together in an acronym, which is, you can see the letters there? Alright. So it's all designed under faith, alright? So the evidences, the 5 key evidences for God, for me, are under the banner of 5 headings. First cause, how did it all start? Anthropic principle, the fine-tuning. I, and justice, stands for moral argument, which I'm not going to cover tonight, but for me it's now the strongest one, that I prefer the most. I can go into that in a lot more detail, but testimony have changed lives, Christians, people who report conversions, whose lives change from day to night, like Paul in the Bible, Saul, and then Hughes' history, Jesus' life, death, resurrection. I'm actually only going to cover 3 of these tonight, partly for time, partly due to complexity, but I also cover the others. We are going to look at first cause, anthropic principle, and also the last one, histories. So we're skipping out the moral argument, which is to say, I've grown to love the most at the moment, and then also testimonies. We're going to skip that one out, which is usually quite short. What about this for a quote, which we'll not come back to just yet. Give me a minute. We hope you didn't read it. I was in too early there, working with PowerPoints. Anyway, what I was going to do is, God wants to equip us here, the goal is to equip us to share with others. What I want to do here was to show a video. I can't because of copyright rules of YouTube. Apparently I had this video online and it was removed. Anyway, it's a 2-minute clip of Sherlock Holmes. Anyone like Sherlock Holmes? Yeah. So he's in the back of the taxi and he tells Watson, Watson gives him a watch. He looks at the watch and then he tells him everything about the watch, everything about the owner, and everything about the owner's family. So the guy's going, like, how did you get this information? And he then explains, he was absolutely amused. He thought, this is magic, or you've got the information off somebody else. And Sherlock Holmes said, it wasn't magic, I just saw the evidence available. Everyone, including the police, he said in this clip, you can put it in, it's the taxi scene in Sherlock Holmes, you can put it in and watch it yourselves later on. Everyone, including the police, he said, misses the obvious, but to him it's evidence. He was asked, how did you know? He said, I didn't know, I saw. The evidence was there. And when he takes you through it, each bit, one by one, you probably remember watching Sherlock Holmes, you're like, or even Columbo. Have you read the book Tactics? It's all about Columbo. Oh, okay, of course. Put this together. I've tried doing it myself sometimes. It doesn't really work. But the point is, he saw the evidence because he was looking for it. The clues were there for all to see. At the moment, this is one of my favourite quotes, which I put up and took down again, about God, Blaise Pascal. He so regulates the knowledge of himself that he has given signs of himself visible to those who seek him, and not to those who seek him not. There's enough light for only those who only desire to see, and enough obscurity for those who have a contrary disposition. God has made himself feel to an extent for a reason. He's made himself evident to those who want to see him, but not as evident for those who don't want to see him. And now you're thinking, would and why would God do this? Do you want evidence that God has done this? Yeah. You look at Jesus. what did Jesus speak in? Why did he speak in parables? He spoke in parables so that he would find those who were truly seeking. Because it was only those who would come and ask questions who would find the truth. If you're really looking for the truth, you won't miss it. But it was in a sense to filter out those who weren't really looking for the truth, who were coming to see him with duplicitous reasons, looking for something else. Because I read that quote at the start and thought, really? God, would God do this? I thought, Jesus done it to an extent. No one's going to miss him who wants to find him. That's all we need to take from that. But he may make himself feel. Does our world offer clues? Is there evidence that we don't see it? Maybe some people don't look for it, or worse, they miss it because they don't want to see it. That can also be the case. Again, I put the evidence in a memorable acronym, FAITH, so that I can carry around with me. Again, we can be a bit equipped. I've got something from each category that I can share with people. Again, we've looked at what they stand for. We're going to start with the first cause. So first cause, also known as the cosmological argument. So, where did it all come from? Why is there something rather than nothing? And the point is, physical matter, whatever it is, requires an explanation. Have you ever found anything? No doubt you have. Hopefully it's something valuable. I actually once found a cat. I was on my fertile prize, really? You sort of don't really find the cat, maybe the cat finds you. But I was on my girlfriend and my wife's house, and on the way past this house, this little alleyway, and I walked in and I seen this black and white little cat, little white, they called it Socks because it had little white paws. But it seen me and it followed me, and then, I didn't want to bring it with me because it clearly belonged somewhere else. But as I walked across the road, I was like, it's going to follow me, so I've got to make sure it's safe here. So I kind of brought it with me across the road to make sure it was safe. When I got into the house, my girlfriend ended up saying at the time, where did that come from? So again, anytime you find something, it needs an explanation, right? You need to explain where did it come from. It didn't just get there by itself. Somebody owns it. It's got a mother. We wouldn't accept no explanation. My girlfriend wouldn't have accepted at the time no explanation. It's not acceptable to say, it just is. It's just there. Everything we know about the world is what's called contingent, which means it's a cause outside of itself. Everything we know in the world so far can be traced back to a cause. Something caused that thing to be there, an inanimate object, people, whatever you want it to be. A ball on the beach. Now just because we increase the size of the ball to the size of the earth, the need for an explanation remains. It still requires an explanation as to why it's there. Because everything we know is contingent as a cause outside of itself. The earth, as you may know, at one time was considered eternal, so there was no cause required. It's always been. The earth's always been. The earth is eternal, so no one needs to explain where did it come from. The suggestion of a beginning of the earth back in the early days, back in the early 1900s, was frowned upon. Why was it frowned upon so badly? Because of the implications that that had. If it wasn't always here, at some point it had to come into existence. And a few quotes on that at the time. Arthur Eddington, British astronomer, said, "The notion of a beginning is repugnant to me. I simply do not believe that the present order of things started off with a bang. The expanding universe is preposterous." Can't believe this. Repugnant. That's not a neutral term. It's repugnant to me. What did Albert Einstein say? The idea is annoying. That's what he said. But discoveries, scientific discoveries, caused a rethink. In the 1920s, we had expanding universe was discovered through redshift, which is the idea of distant galaxies were moving away from each other. It was redder than they expected, showing that they were moving away from each other, which showed up this redshift, showed that the universe was expanding. So at one point it was smaller, but it's kept expanding. That was one thing. The other thing, there's several things. The other one is the cosmic background radiation, which basically is that in this theory, the second law of thermodynamics, all energy will be used up at some point. If the universe has always been, at some point all the energy would have been used up. It couldn't possibly always have been here. No one in the scientific community really anymore doesn't think that it came into being at some point in time. No one believes that it's eternal anymore. So it couldn't be denied any longer. The scientific data revealed that the Earth at some point came into existence. I may be telling you stuff you already know here, but just bear with us. But there's a new problem. there's a cause then required. If it came into existence, there's got to be a reason and a cause for how it comes into existence. I know it's the Big Bang. So the Big Bang comes, and it may surprise a lot of you, and maybe some of us already know this, but I can accept the idea of the Big Bang, 100%. But the Big Bang, this doesn't solve the dilemma. You may have heard this phrase said, if you read the book, you'll have heard this said, a Big Bang requires a Big Bang.
Yeah.
So if there's a Big Bang, a big explosion, there's got to be something to cause the explosion. And no other theory will work. A quantum vacuum doesn't solve the problem because it's still something. It's a mass of spiraling energy. Inflation theory doesn't work, again, because it's still something. You still require a cause. So scientific data has helped our quest because it revealed that the universe came into being at some point in time. We need something transcendent beyond and apart from the universe itself to best explain the universe. You will get other theories out there, and I take them seriously and I listen to them. I'm no science expert, but again, this is all the cosmological argument. And it's based on a helpful way to remember it. If any of you read William Lane Craig stuff, you probably came across this. 3 premises. Alright? Brains will be getting tired by the end of the night. Everything which begins to exist has a cause. So everything exists has a cause. Most people can accept that. Every now and again I'll meet someone that doesn't accept it. But I'm into proven scientific data. I'm into the known world here. We're into another realm if we're going to talk about things that are here that were never caused. The second premise is the universe began to exist. Well, therefore, it naturally follows that the universe was caused. And it's very hard to argue with any of these premises in and of themselves. But the question then is, well, what's the likely cause? So we know it was caused, but that doesn't mean God. Yeah, that doesn't mean God. Right now we're just dealing with it was caused. But what's the likely cause? So what's the logical cause? Well, how can we find out? I mean, how can we best investigate? Well, what do we know about the likely cause? We know that the Big Bang created all matter, space, time, and energy. Stephen Hawking, they acknowledge this. Matter, space, time, energy, everything. Everything was created at that singularity, at that point. Before it was absolute nothingness. Not something, absolute nothingness. None of us can grasp what absolute nothingness is. No matter how hard you try, you cannot grasp this. But therefore, whatever created that caused the Big Bang, you can each go through each of these, had to be outside of the universe. The universe can't cause itself. That's illogical. So most likely it had to be outside the universe. Because space was created at that point, it also has to be spaceless. Because time was created at that point, it has to be timeless. It also has to be immaterial, because all matter was created at that point. All matter. It also was itself uncaused. And again, we get in a little bit more to that, because I know a question naturally follows, well, who created God? And we can talk about that separately. It also has to be powerful. There's no one's going to argue with the amount of forces of nature that have been created at the time of the Big Bang and the universe that we live in. And the other one I'd argue then is it has to be purposeful. Purposeful, you say? Is the world not random? Yeah, but there's laws of nature. There's mathematical formulas in the universe and in nature that don't change, that we rely upon for measurements all the time. So there's a purpose in nature. The way, the trees work, photosynthesis, the way things get energy, there's a structure and an order to the universe. So what can we say about whatever the first cause was? Well, we can say these things. Well, if we can, again, I know we'll get some disagreement on some of them, but if we can say these things, or we know these things, whatever it was, we would need faith to believe in it. Whatever it was. Whatever put everything here, we need faith to believe in it. Again, William Lane Craig says that either an abstract object or an unembodied mind are the best explanations. One is the best explanation. Obviously, an abstract object is hard to comprehend, has no ability to create anything. But most likely, an unembodied mind, otherwise known as, for us, God Himself. An unembodied mind. Has the brains get tired yet?
No.
Yeah. Halfway through. Let's dig in. The best explanation is an intelligent design. Now, see if you're having this conversation with someone I'm not at this point getting them to confess their sins and accept Jesus. At this point, we're just talking about what the likely causes of the universe was. Some scientific people will be happy to have this conversation. Some people don't want to know about this stuff. But there are a lot of people who do. And that's why I do it. First cause, cosmological argument. The attributes we have in the universe around us perfectly describe what we know about God. It said in Romans 1, verse 18, that God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature can be clearly seen, so that man is without excuse. We see logic, we see order, we see structure, we see beauty, we see all these wonderful things, and we know that they didn't do it by themselves. And we know these things about whatever created the universe. Conclusion of the first cause, cosmological argument, is the best explanation is something doesn't come from nothing, so theism appears to be on firmer ground than atheism. Now I'm throwing that out there because you get mocked for being a Christian. You get mocked for being a believer. I want to go a little bit on the offensive, not to be argumentative, not to mock anybody, but just what I believe is logical, true, sound, and reasonable. I follow them steps of debate, if you like. And I say, what part of that is flawed? You tell me what part of that's flawed, because it's logical and consistent, as I would say, to believe in God, and then everything that follows from that. So that's F, that's first cause, cosmological argument. So the second part is the anthropic principle, also known as the teleological argument. Don't often use that phrase that much, just makes it sound even more complicated than it needs to be. Fine-tuning. Use that, that's a street term that people will get. Fine-tuning of the universe. It's just a nice picture to look at while you're listening to these heavy words. It's nice, isn't it? I've always been. I have always been. So the teleological argument, fine-tuning argument, the second one. Design suggests the designer. Here's this quote. Yeah, the anthropic principle says that the seemingly arbitrary and unrelated constants in physics, all the physics people are having right now, have one strange thing in common. These are precisely the values you need if you want the universe capable of producing life. All these unrelated constants in physics, they're that strange thing in common. They're all the measurements exactly the measurements that we need for producing life. And for I would consider it's foolish and unscientific not to question why things are the way they are. Stephen Hawking said, the odds, actually I've got a wee bit of paper here, funny enough. Stephen Hawking said this, he said, the odds of against a universe like ours emerging into something like the Big Bang are enormous. I think there are clearly religious implications. Stephen Hawking said that. There are clearly religious implications to the findings of science. The values don't have to be what they are. They could be any value. We're going to look at some. We're going to look at some values which are known as anthropic principles, known as fine-tuning. I think there's about 38 of them, I said before. So here's some we're going to look at. So cosmological constant. So these are 5 examples of fine-tuning in our universe where the values are just exactly the values they need to be in order to sustain life. Cosmological constant, this is where you probably need to write when your brain gets a bit tired, is the energy density of the vacuum of space. It's responsible for the expansion of the universe. Nobel-winning physicist Steven Weinberg reported, down here, he said, could have been any value, positive or negative. From first principles, one would guess would be very large. It's remarkably well adjusted in our favour. If large and positive, the cosmological constant, expansion of the universe rate, would act as a repulsive force that increases with distance, a force that would prevent matter from coming together in the early universe, the process that was the first step in forming galaxies and stars and planets and people. If large and negative, the cosmological constant would act as an attractive force, which increases with distance, a force that would almost immediately reverse the expansion of the universe and cause it to collapse. Conclusion, it's stunningly precise. We know the universe expands. This is the rate of expansion. Now we could look at initial conditions before we look at the rate of expansion, but the rate of expansion, if it was weaker by 1 in 10 to the power of 60, it collapses in on itself. If it's stronger by 1 in the power of 10 to the 60 again, the expansion would proceed too rapidly, no stars would form. If either little was adjusted by 1 in 10 to the power of 60 in either way, then it wouldn't have worked. These are things that are outside our head. The scientific measurements have told us this is what we rely upon, but the measurements are perfect and exact. The neutrons and protons then, the particles in an atom, if the difference was to increase by 1 part in 700, nuclear fusion would stop. There would be no energy source for life. This is the particles in an atom. If they were slightly weaker, multi-protein nuclei would not hold together. The result of that would be hydrogen would be the only element in our universe, and life would be impossible. So that's neutrons and protons. Another phenomenal example of fine-tuning. We're going to look at just 3 more. The next one is atmospheric gases. O2, it's 21% of our atmosphere, as some of us may know. 78% of it is nitrogen, 0.04% is CO2. But if it was 25%, just slightly more, fires would be erupting spontaneously. If it was 15%, just 6% less, we would all suffocate. So again, O2 comprises 21% of our atmosphere, and that's just almost exactly just the perfect measurement that we need in order to breathe and survive. If the CO2 was just any amount higher, we'd have a runaway greenhouse effect and everything would burn up. If it was just a little bit lower, plants would be unable to maintain photosynthesis. So again, these are just examples, 2 other examples, and this was the one that got the most response the last time I done this talk. It was the protection of Jupiter. I didn't know this. I'll tell you what it's called in a minute. But the current orbit protects the Earth. So the orbit of Jupiter protects the Earth. So its gravitational field is so large that it attracts asteroids and comets that might otherwise strike the Earth. Why? We're in the Goldilocks zone. Do you know what it's called? The cosmic vacuum cleaner. Its gravitational field is so large that it attracts all asteroids and comets that would have been said to strike the Earth. It's almost like a vacuum cleaner sucking up all the things that could strike the Earth. This is the protection of Jupiter. It always was the one that got the most responses, to be honest. So the protection of Jupiter. Gravity. We all know about gravity. We all stand on the ground right now because of it. A force which attracts the bodies to the centre of the Earth. The difference in the force based is on the size of the object. As you know, on the moon, it's a 6th of the gravity of the Earth. It's the weakest force in nature, though. The nuclear force, which is the force between neutrons and the atomic nucleus. Well, it's very complicated. But the nuclear force is 10,000 billion times stronger than gravity. And yet you can imagine the force of gravity. Again, this could be any value. And if it was altered by 0.1 to the power of 38, one with like 38 zeros after it, we wouldn't exist. If it was stronger, star formation would change, there'd be no sun. If it was weaker, star formation would be less, and it would be decreased in mass. There'd be no heavy essential elements exist for life. Okay, 3 laws of science stuff. 5 examples of fine-tuning. There's 38 that we know of, alright? That's 38 that we know of. And the best thing my kids love is a picture of the Goldilocks zone. We just sit in the perfect Goldilocks zone with all the measurements just exactly what they need to be in order to have life and to have life sustained. Princeton physicist Freeman Dyson suggested that the universe in a sense knew that we were coming. Donald Page, Princeton Institute for Advanced Study, and this is the impressive statistic. This might be the last statistic we need to get our head around, alright? He calculated the odds of the universe randomly taken suitable for life. This guy is incredible. He went and did this research to figure out, let me get some kind of number where I can work out the statistical probability of the universe taking the form that it has. He said 1 in 10 to the power of 124. How big is this number? That's what we need to ask, isn't it? Because it's just lots of zeros. How big is this number? Well, again, last little bit of maths in our head. All history takes place in 10 to the power of 18 seconds. All stars in the universe take 10 to the power of 22. And the cosmos contains 10 to the power of 80 atomic particles. It's all them things combined. That's the chances, the statistical chances of our universe taking the form that it has, of all the measurements being the way they're supposed to be. Because all them things combined. To say unlikely would be a bit of an understatement. So again, this is the second argument that I use in my list of faith. First cause, causal argument, anthropic principle. Let me tell you about the fine-tuning of the universe. Now, if somebody just doesn't want to know when they don't care, they'll come up with any other explanations, that's fine. But I'm just saying it's logical and reasonable to believe in an intelligent mind behind them things. So, we'll leave the final words to our friend again, Stephen Hawking. He says, it'd be very difficult to explain why the universe would have begun in just the way except as the act of God who intended to create beings like us. So Stephen Hawking, in some of his moments, started to think it's very hard to explain why things are the way they are, except to say somebody very powerful done this. That's what he acknowledged. But we already know and believe. So people do have these thoughts. I appreciate it as intellectual honesty. Argument just the way it is with no need to explain will not do. It's probably the number one argument against the fine tuning. It just is the way it is. We just happen to be here to experience it the way it is. That's just the way it is. We don't ask any questions. I'm like, sorry, when did I start doing that? I was in a shop last week, and I was in with my two daughters, and they spotted that, was it my name? And maybe one of the daughters' names was beside each other on like a stocking, a little boot thing that they wanted. It wasn't Christmas, it was some stocking thing that they wanted. They spotted my name, and then they're like, oh, my name, Sophie's beside that one. I was like, well, that's a bit of a coincidence. Both the boots were together. Wow, that's amazing. And I walked down and thought, imagine my other daughter Isabella's name had been beside it. That would have been like, somebody's came into the shop and set up my family's names on the boots in order for me to buy all these things. Imagine my wife Nadine, Owen and Zara. Imagine 6 of our names were together. That would be, somebody's done this. There's no way that can happen by chance. So this guy's saying all them factors need to be all in line. And again, it's not right to say, I won't examine and I won't question. It's not the approach that we take in science in general. For me, it would be more unscientific to say, it just is the way it is. Let's not investigate, it doesn't really matter, I don't need an alternative, I don't need an explanation. We work with observable data, and then what do? We have the hypothesis. And the way I talk about this, I don't oversell this. I say, this is inference to the best explanation. I'm not telling you it's a knockdown argument, everyone's going to believe God because of it, because we know that's not going to happen. I'm taking the data, and I'm saying, what's inference to the best explanation? What's the best explanation of the data that I have? So don't oversell what we're saying, because not everyone's going to buy that. But I'm saying, tell me then, why is it more logical to believe what you believe? But what is it that you believe? We'll deal with that tomorrow. Last bit, less technical and scientific history. So you're doing the F, A is the anthropic principle, I is for injustice, T is for testimony, H is for history. So history, Jesus and the Bible. So, no serious scholar would dispute the life of Jesus. That would be ridiculous. There are some out there, but let's just deal with the fact that most acknowledge that Jesus existed. There's lots we could go over, but for me, everything rests in the resurrection. Why does it all rest in the resurrection? Well, it says in 1 Corinthians 15 that if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, all of us are to be more pitied than all men. Yeah. I love that verse so much. If it isn't true, what are you doing? Guys, get up and just live your life. Go and seek pleasure or whatever makes you happy. What's the point doing it if it's not even true? You're fooling yourself. I pity you more than everybody else. It has to be true. That's the key. And what's the key? That he rose from the dead. And everything that stands for is true. If it's true, it's the single most important event in human history. Nothing else comes close. We're going to look at the historicity of the event, and again, this is all about inference to the best explanation. Not a knockdown argument necessarily, but the best explanation. What we do in this is we begin with the evidence available to us, and then infer what would, if true, provide the best explanation. So what we're going to look at is the resurrection. Evidence for the resurrection. Some of you may have done this stuff before, you may have looked into evidence for the resurrection a bit. Again, this is what I use as just part of that faith acronym that I use as the last one. There's so much you can cover with history. This is just history, evidence for the resurrection. So, we ought to view an event as historical if it gives the best explanation of the evidence surrounding it. And with the case of the resurrection, no other explanation comes close. And do you know what? There's a great book out there, just escaped my mind for a moment, Michael and Cohen and Gary Habermas, Case of the Resurrection. Yeah, it's the best book I've read on the resurrection. Do you know why? Because it's so strong, the arguments, you don't need the Bible. You don't need the Bible. That's the premise of the book. You don't even need the Bible to prove it. But when I say prove it, you know what I mean by that? Making the best case for this being the likely explanation. Critical scholars admit these truths. Critical scholars, atheist scholars, they're not out to support Christianity. They admit these three truths. 1, tomb was discovered empty by women Sunday after the crucifixion. 2, Jesus' disciples had real experiences with one whom they believed was the risen Christ. And 3, as a result of their preaching by the disciples, Resurrection Center, the Christian church established and grew. So the critical scholars admit these three truths. So All scholars, most scholars, whatever school of thought assent to these truths. The resurrection of Christ is his best explanation for each of them individually, but even more powerfully when you take the three of them all together. And the skeptic, if you're having a conversation about the evidence of the resurrection, would need to be able to explain away all three of them. So we're going to look at each of them in turn here. First of all, the empty tomb. Again, I'm sure some of you have heard this stuff before a bit, but the empty tomb, what is the evidence for the empty tomb? So the tomb was discovered empty. So, let's see what else I have here. The empty tomb, the resurrection was preached in the same city that Jesus was buried shortly before. It wasn't an obscure place where no one had heard of it, it was in Jerusalem itself. So the very place that he was put to death was the very place that they were running around preaching the resurrection. So that in itself, they couldn't have done this if Jesus was still in the tomb. How could they go around preaching about the resurrection? The authorities wanted to stamp this nonsense out, which is what they wanted to do. How could they have done that had they not said, the bones are still in the tomb, why are you guys going on about this? Clearly just bring the body out to get these guys to be quiet. You're preaching in the place that he's put to death and he's buried. The resurrection of Jesus could not have been maintained in Jerusalem for a single hour if the emptiness of the tomb had not been established for all concerned. So this is just about the empty tomb. We're just looking at evidence for the empty tomb. The Jews admit to the empty tomb. If you look with me in Matthew 28. Matthew 28, verse 11. So this is what's called evidence from a hostile witness. Matthew 28. Verse 11, it says, while the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised the plan to give the soldiers a large sum of money, telling him here to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of our trouble. So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed, and this story has been widely circulated among the Jews this very day. Please come and say that came away during the night and stole them away. The Jews acknowledged that the tomb was empty. They were hostile witnesses. They don't want to support, obviously, they wouldn't want to support Christianity. The Toledo Yeshu, which is a compilation of early Jewish writings, also confirms that the tomb was empty. That he wasn't there. That the bones weren't there. So they admit to this. Again, Jews are a hostile witness. They're opposed to Christianity. They admitted a fact that wasn't in their favour, which makes it powerful testimony. This is, as you know, the most powerful testimony we have is evidence from a hostile source. From people who would not want to support Christianity. Other factors for the empty tomb: the tomb was never venerated as a shrine. First century custom was to set up shrines so people could do pilgrimages of worship. There was 50 sites in Jesus' day of other shrines of people who died. There was never any site venerated as a shrine of Jesus, because it would suggest that the bones weren't there. Mark's account then is simple. There's no signs of legendary development. I don't know if anyone's probably haven't read the Gospel of Peter or heard about the supposed forgery from AD 125 very, very late. But everyone in this article, it's actually quite funny. Everyone in the story of the resurrection there was watching the resurrection. 3 men came out of the tomb, the hands reached the clouds, and there was a talking cross as well. So sometimes the sign that things are authentic is to get this legendary development where it becomes more and more outlandish. You get miraculous things that didn't have any purpose behind them, but you have talking crosses. But Mark's account's not like this. It's got things like this, because the ones who discovered the empty tomb were women. It was discovered by women. The testimony of women in the first century, unfortunately, was worthless. It was worthless. So the Bible put together, supposedly, and yet women were the ones who were the first witnesses. And in fact, it says the fact that the despised women whose testimony was deemed worthless were the chief witnesses to the fact of the empty tomb can only possibly be explained, if like it or not, they actually were the discoverers of the empty tomb. So strong evidence of the empty tomb, most scholars don't deny. D.H. Van Dagden said, it's extremely difficult to object to the empty tomb on historical grounds. Those who do, based on theological or physiological assumptions. That was the quote there. So that's what he said. This is not a Christian. He's not a Christian writer. He's not writing from a Christian point of view. But he's talking about the evidence for the empty tomb. So then, the next bit on that one, you may just think again of the 3 things that we looked at, which was the critical scholars admit the 3 truths. One was the empty tomb. The second one was the resurrection appearances. Resurrection appearances. Evidence suggests that many of Jesus' followers claimed to have seen them alive. We know this. This is what's known as the earliest creed, 1 Corinthians 15:3-8. It was what Paul had heard in Jerusalem just shortly after his conversion when he went up to Jerusalem. For what he received, he passed it on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, that he appeared to Cephas at the end of the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of his brothers and sisters at the same time, and then he went on to James and so on. So, the strong majority of historians, again non-Christian historians, acknowledge this creed dates back to AD 30-35. It's our earliest creed that we have. Jared Ludman, who's actually an atheist, a New Testament professor at Göttingen, says the elements in the tradition are to be dated the first 2 years after the crucifixion of Jesus, not later than 3 years. The formation of the appearance traditions mentioned in 1 Corinthians 15 falls into the time between 30 and 30 AD. So I'm not going to do it all right now, because as you may think in your mind, there's lots of opposition to all these theories. There's this to everything, that's grand. There's the hallucination theory, there's the idea that they were all hallucinating. Mass hallucinations don't generally happen. Loads of recognized experts in the field have shown that that's not really possible, that they all have had hallucinations at different times en masse and seen these things. I've dealt with a lot of these again in my blog, because these sorts of objections always come in. But again, just supporting the idea, this was an early creed, this is what passed on. Then what does this do away with? The whole idea of Jesus was a later myth, added later on. Well, people say that. Yeah, he's just one of them just like all them other gods. They brought it in there way on down the line. That's not the case. We have a creed acknowledged by atheist historians that says that it was being passed on within a couple of years of his death, that he rose from the dead. What's the other evidence of that? Well, the Christian church established in Jerusalem. The origin of the Christian church. There is simply no good explanation of how the church managed to grow despite incredible opposition. Opposition from the Romans, opposition from the pagans, opposition from the Jews, opposition from the Greeks. Everywhere they turned, they were opposed. Everything about Christian life at that time was opposed. Yeah. Everyone was out to crush them and destroy them, and predicted many times that that's what would happen. Here we sit today. It didn't happen. And anything but that. 11 of the 12 apostles were martyred. Didn't recant on their deathbeds. Despite being given opportunities to recant, they refused to recant and have their lives spared. Why? Because they had seen the risen Jesus. They believed they'd seen the risen Jesus. So they refused to do that. Evidence, so again, this is another fact, this is 3 of the factors about the historicity of the resurrection. I know that isn't always really exciting to share, but I just put these things together in an acronym that I can remember, that stuff we probably already believe, but it's to show you that you can flesh a lot of this stuff out. The stuff we believe, there's a lot of evidence to back it up. The more I've delved into Christianity and even other religions, it's quite astonishing. I'll talk more about this. Obviously, you can put religions into, there only is 3 monotheistic religions. There's Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Obviously, Judaism doesn't accept Jesus. We can provide the evidence for Jesus and the resurrection. And the Islam actually teaches that Jesus didn't even die. So it goes against all of the historians that we know about by saying that he didn't even die. So there's lots of great evidence that we can use to say, well, what we said, why does it make no sense? So I put these things in an acronym of faith. This is a guy who grew up right across the street from me many years before Beesworth. I commonly hang out in C.S. Lewis Square beside my house. He's from Belfast, I just like to make our claim. But it said Christianity is a false, is of no importance. But if it's true, it's of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. And the last time I did a talk on evidence for the resurrection, I said the same thing about the resurrection. It's either true or it's not true. There's no middle ground with this stuff. Not many gods, your way, my way. If this stuff's true, he really died for our sins. He really rose from the dead to free us of our sins. And he really did actually be the only human in history to rise from the dead, proving all the things he said, because what? He predicted it as well, and predicted it in the Old Testament. So what we're learning about today cannot be of moderate importance. And that's what makes me strive on here. It's either true or it's not true. This is just the way I have. I've got many acronyms tomorrow that I use to help me with things. They may help you, they may not. You'll be like, what is he on about? Whatever helps us. It's what helps me. There's much more evidence than that. So there's much more in the moral argument. The idea that Where does objective values come from? How is there any such thing as right and wrong? What does justice mean? Where does justice come from? Why do we set up law courts? Where does all this idea come from? If we're just biological motion and matter that just put together by chance, what does it matter? What way you want to live, what culture you're brought up in, what's right and wrong? Moral argument has came to be an incredibly strong one. But I'll leave you with a scripture just to finish off. Psalm 19. As I said at the start, the evidence is all around us. We only have to open our eyes and look. I know that we know this, and hopefully our faith is strong, but we need to help our fellow people that we meet on the streets, our family members. We have to help other people. Why? God makes his appeal through us. He makes his appeal through us. The same people we're trying to help look around and see the same evidence that we see. Psalm 19 tells us, one of my favourite scriptures, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hand. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech, they use no words. No sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into all the earth. Their words to the end of the world. And you can read on and read on. The evidence is there. What does it tell us? God is always communicating with us, with the world. People look up and see the night sky. They see the sun shining today. I don't know if it's like Belfast, it's quite strange to see it so consistently. The world that gets to see God speaking. God has not left himself without testimony. This is just some things we can put together to help us again, and there's so much more you can learn on that. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking something more practical. How can we engage people who've got objections to Christianity and to the way we live our lives? Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you keeping your brain on to the very, very end. Many thanks.